Welcome to another episode of the 100 Monkey Radio Show with Tom and Ramon. And man.
Ramon, what episode is this anyways? We got to be getting into what, 122,
I think,
123.
Let me look at the archives. I believe this is the 122nd or first.
121.
121. Wow, 121 episodes. That's 2 hours apiece times 121 of me putting up with Tom.
Oh yeah! Ow!
So we survived the quote unquote of apocalypse.
As Ramon would say, acopolis.
Yes, acopolis.
Yeah. The acopolis didn't do nothing to me.
Yeah, because that's what it was in an apocalypse. It wasn't an apocalypse.
Oh man!
But
we're accomplices in the apocalypse.
There we go.
There we go. So really quickly, let's see. I saw some news on what they did in Mexico near which temple was it?
Chichen Itza, yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
Go ahead, Tom. Describe that.
That was like pulling teeth. I mean, I watched that thing and I just could not believe. I thought Hollywood was in California. I mean, I seriously thought it was in California. It wasn't down there. But it was, that place was that was wired for sound. It had lighting. These guys, obviously, if those were indigenous and traditional, even members of the Mayan society, they had makeup men, and the costumes looked like they came right out of Hollywood and not something that was traditional Mayan. I'm sorry. I think the thing looked like it was just a huge Hollywood production. There were bleachers, there were seats all lined up in front of the pyramid. There were they must have had thousands of people there watching this thing. Film crews, they had the big cameras set up. It's like, I could not believe it. This is supposed to be a sacred ceremony that is honoring the cycle, honoring the turning over of the clock into a new cycle. And it was a big freaking Hollywood production.
Gotta make that money.
Now, I wonder what a front row seat cost to that. I bet you it was a pretty penny.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. Patrick ended up going down to that. I think Patrick and
a bunch
they
of
went
people
to they went to the one in Chichen Itza.
Yeah.
A bunch of people.
I haven't heard how
I'm
reaction, but he and his wife went down.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear some of the reactions from the people that actually went down there, because what I saw, and all I saw was a 15 or 20 minute YouTube, but I was not impressed at all. I was less than impressed. So, anyways,
yeah.
I vented my little bit there. I guess I had to.
You had something really quick on the Fukushima, actually. It's funny you found it.
Oh yeah, I was poking around this afternoon looking to see if there were any UFO sightings anywhere in the world on the 21st, and surprisingly, there are very few posted out there that I could find anyways. Now, mind you, I only looked for about 20 or 30 minutes, And the one that I did find had to do with I think they termed it as an archonic type of UFO over Fukushima, which I found kind of interesting. So, the when they say archonic, it's the demonic or the spirit type craft or manifestation, whatever you want to call it. But I did.
How do they know? Does it have like archonic logo on the side or something?
No, it didn't have a solid shape. So it was like a shape that was constantly morphing, and it was kind of wispy. So who knows what it is? I didn't download it, and when I find a really good one, I will actually download the video.
They had music pumping out like on Apocalypse Now. We are the Archons, my friends. Ba ba ba.
Oh no. Where is that? I would love to get that music and use it for the show.
You can also find us on
Queen, by the way.
YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, regular, same place, same old places. And anything else, Tom, before we...
I just want to remind everybody that we are doing another show on the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Oh, yeah.
On Tuesdays from 5 to 7. That is a live show, and if we can ever manage to get the phone system there figured out, it will be call-in. It's supposed to be call-in. And then on Friday nights, they have a Truth Frequency Radio Network hosts all kind of jump together, and they have their own show called Hangar 18. So actually last night, Ramon and I were honored to host it. And we actually had one of the guests that we have here with us this week, Mark Hoza, and we had Richard Allen Miller on there. And plus we had Tony Kudos and Donnie Gilson, who are both other hosts on the Truth Frequency Network. But that's a fun show. We enjoyed the heck out of it. It's kind of a laid-back format, no real, grilling the subject of our attention. Just nice conversational format, and it was fun. So anyways, besides that, and we're still here. Energy is my energy report says yesterday was calm as could be. It was smooth waters all day long yesterday. Now today it felt like there's some purpose behind it. So what I'm sensing energetically out there is that the excitement and the energy that had been built up around the 21st, when everybody realized they were still here when they woke up in the morning and everything calmed down. I think now all these people and all of us out here who have been working on consciousness, working on raising our consciousness, are realizing that we have to get to work. And now we don't have that distraction of December 21st in front of us. Maybe we can focus some energy in something that's a little bit more productive. So that's kind of the way I'm sensing the energy right now, is that people are taking a close look at where do we go now and where should I focus my energy now. And I think that's a very good thing. So
yeah, which is a perfect time to be interviewing Iain, because he's got a lot of ideas in that direction and a lot of help.
Exactly.
That'll be exciting. Yeah.
So that's Mark Hoza, if you guys don't recognize his voice. And with Mark, we have Iain Trousdell. He is a water intuitive. He's co-director with John Wilkes of the Healing Water Institute in England, USA, and New Zealand, and a leading pioneer of Flowform ecotechnology. He spent a lifetime experiencing water, deepening ideas of its central spiritual position on our planet and lives, and lives in New Zealand, deep in the South Pacific. His websites are healing-water.org and flowform.net. Iain, wasn't there another website that I saw as I was poking around on yours somewhere too?
Yeah. We've also got designforlife.co.nz, which is our entrepreneurial sort of business development company.
Yeah.
So there's quite a story. Hey, I like that introduction. I learned some stuff there.
Nice.
I'm also living in England as well, so things have changed a bit because John Wilkes died last year. He was 80, and while I sort of feel him still, so to speak, in spirit, he's not on the planet in that way anymore.
So, real quickly before we get into you, would you? Who was John Wilkes?
Yeah, John.
Or shall I say, who is John Wilkes?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So I'll use the past tense for his name, John Wilkes. But John was one of these very early biomimicry technology pioneers working in the 1950s and 60s on learning from nature how things work there with metamorphosis and laws of life rather than the laws of simple structure and fixed things. And as a result of many years of work, he came up or was given this Flowform technology, which I can say a bit more about later. And his work, is very important, but he's one of these sort of folk who was very quiet and kept to himself. So we're hoping the world will get to know a lot more about him as an inventor, as a genius looking into the way that life operates in nature through water.
Very cool. So now that you partnered up with him, did you both found the company together, or how did that work?
So in the 1970s, I went to work with him as one of his early students, and then had 3 years with him, went back to New Zealand and continued. So the last 7 years with regard to the Flowform eco-technology, we've been bringing together everything about it because it's developed organically around the world over 40 years and 5,000 projects in 50 countries, but always at a sort of artisan, one-off project type of level of business. So the last 7 years, a group of us has, with investors, pulled that all together, and it's now ready for international launch as a proper, dynamic, coordinated, energized business, capacity to supply, high volume.
Cool. So what actually, we do ask this quite a few of our guests. What actually turned your head towards going into researching water and life in general?
Tom, I think, like Mark was saying, this is a very opportune moment. We've just had the 21st, and your energy reading is saying that, okay, time now to focus on where we're going with this. I think it's just yet another moment where a new paradigm is taking a step into human culture. And this new paradigm, I think, has everything to do with water. We've had, since Galileo's time, more and more mineral-based culture in the West, and we now need to make that a fluid, liquid, or water-based culture in absolutely everything we're doing, including our understanding. So instead of dead thinking, we need to develop living thinking. So I had a real interest in all of this, 40 years ago, and went looking for somebody, found John in England, and it became very clear that movement is the issue. Movement, flow, metamorphosis, and water is the element that does that.
So kind of what I was fishing for is what actually probed your interest? What sparked your interest in the first place? Was it just something that you always seemed to have had an interest in?
I've always been interested in water. I was a champion competitive swimmer in the 60s and spent a lot of time in water. As a little boy, I was on a 6-week journey from England to New Zealand with my family on a ship, and was fascinated by the ocean and everything like that. And then it came to that in my 20s when I met John. He was working with water. It just continued from there. It's fascinating. Water's so mysterious. It's the one thing that that breaks so many rules and yet is so central.
We take it for granted too, don't we?
Oh, yeah. It's like everything. We take so much for granted, and we as humanity only has a surface understanding. And I think this is because of this mineral thinking.
Right.
That we have. We're heading back towards the way that traditional societies did things. They had a deeper thinking.
So what do you mean by mineral thinking?
Okay, if we just look at the intellect, we look at Galileo, and all the inventors that followed. They had these capacities to use logic and the intellect to make things work, to extract what they wanted out of it in machinery. And you see the sort of surface of things. You develop a capacity to make things work, but it's all on the basis of the skeleton of things, if you know what I mean. So, from my point of view, looking at the world, we have we have the skeleton of things. Then we have the life of things. Then we have consciousness of things. And then you have the spirit of things. That is the identity, the essence of things. And all the world's pollution at the moment and many of its other problems are the result of using skeleton or mineral type intellectual thinking to create what we want. And this is a dead thinking. Therefore, it will result in death and pollution. If you look at Schauberger, he had a living thinking.
Right.
His technology, which was born out of living thinking, has no pollution. It uses the forces of nature that are in the life realm, not in the skeleton, so to speak, realm.
Gotcha.
So we need to change our thinking. So if we change our thinking, we will come up with the solutions that will solve our problems in every area. And I think this new type of thinking needs to be a water sort of thinking.
You had something there, Ramon?
Oh, no, I was just going to say how, Iain, you remind me of, have you ever heard of Avatar, the Japanese animation? Not the big movie that was made in Hollywood, but the Japanese.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And they had, like, the kids that were all different elements, and I was guessing you must be one of the Water Clan.
Well, the Water Clan, yeah.
But
that's what it's about. 4 elements, so to speak, and the Greeks understood about this, but we need to bring a new approach without leaving our intellectual skeleton thinking behind. We need that to be organized, but we've got to learn to be able to move from one to the other.
Yeah. The one thing I've noticed, and I might be jumping a little ahead, but a lot of people that we've talked to, even, for example, Krista Clark, which she's been on a show many times, talk about how when they have a problem, you sit in water or you're taking a shower, and these ideas just come to you out of nowhere. For example, a lot of famous scientists, they were in the bath when they got these amazing ideas, or they figured out the problem that they were trying to figure out.
I think it puts, part of it is moving into another part of your being, which is associated with water, and that's the life element in a person. So we take this very much for granted. I think Ramon is what is a human being? We have a body, and we carry on through our life. But the only time we actually see the physical body by itself is when we're with somebody who's died, and the body has no life in it. It's like a rock. It's gone cold. It's immobile. But when the life element's there, we can move around. We can do all sorts of things. We can have intuitions. And I think being in water or relaxing under a shower then is a different type of thinking can start to get hold. It's all quite subtle, but this is how it works, I think.
It's a highly conductive material. I mean, Yeah, there's so many properties that water possesses that, people just, aren't really aware of. Its memory capacity. It's a amazing conductor. And, if it'll conduct, flat out just electricity, heat, cold, et cetera, why not conduct those more subtle energies, the psychic energies?
Absolutely. That's how nature works. Water is continually open to subtle energies coming in from outside the planet, whether it's from the sun or the planets in the solar system or from constellations. These are different forms of light coming in, and the degree of sensitivity of water, including, folk who are quantum physicists who are trying to understand how water operates at an energetic level, is this degree of sensitivity is absolutely phenomenal. And also it's a unified field, so there is only one water, not just on our planet, but elsewhere as well. It's a unified field. So this question we're looking at with inventors, getting ideas that are solutions to questions. So a person has a question, they struggle with it, they work with it, they let go, they come back, they work away on it. And often it's when the person's relaxed. I mean, don't have to be a famous inventor. If you've got a problem, you're out working in the garden or you're going for a bit of a walk along a beach, it's when you relax these ideas appear as a result of an urgent question that you've really worked with. And this also begs the question, are thoughts just generated by bioelectrical mechanisms twittering away inside a brain? If they are, then this doesn't really make sense. To have a new creative thought, totally new. Can a computer have a new creative thought? No. Can a brain that's just a type of biomechanical computer have a new thought? No. New thoughts come from somewhere. And I think from a consciousness realm and maybe a spirit realm through consciousness, mediated by the life realm. So there's a whole lot to it. But I think, anyone involved with Taoism or Shintoism or Hindu or any type of meditative path, this is the sort of way they're operating. We just all use different words for it.
So I know we kind of already touched on several of these things, but would you kind of give us a rundown of all the basic properties and potentials that water has? Just a real brief list, if you would.
Yeah, I had that same question from the point of view of someone who's lived with the water, Iain. Like you've really lived with this question, what is water? And you've been living with it for a long time. And I was thinking of the same question, that I'd like to know what your maybe what some of the fruits of your living question have given to you that you could share.
Well, it's a huge series of levels. There are a lot of levels of different insights. I wouldn't call them necessarily answers, but descriptions on this. So, what is water? My goodness, it's we start at one end or at the other end. But one first thing is I'm inclined to think that water's the original human being. So what is the characteristic of water? Well, we can, by looking at water, we can see that it has those four levels that I've talked about. Water is a physical substance. Water also enables and carries life or energy or information. It's all the same thing, those words: information, frequencies, energy, life, formative forces. Water also is able to carry and be consciousness. We know that from a whole range of different people's work, but probably the best known is Emoto and the work that he's done. But on top of that, I think by living into water, water also has spirit. And so by spirit, I mean the identity, the essence of something is different to consciousness. Spirit is something much more. It has to do with being, a condition of being. And so in that sense, that's what human beings have as well. And also all creatures.
So would you see it, do you see it as a individuated sentient consciousness?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've approached, perhaps I need to say something a little bit about myself, Tom. I've approached this, this work not just with water, but with other things. One from reading, from studying, but also the other side is to living into the phenomena using Goethean science, which is a type of life science where one lives with phenomena over time and allows the phenomena to speak to you through its ideas. Everything is made of ideas. It's like a chair is an idea put together to become physical so that we can sit on it. Everything else has idea in it. And when you follow it, this Goethean science is very applicable to the living world, whereas Newtonian and Galileo type science is applicable to the dead world, cogs and stones and inorganic science. That's again one of the problems with our world at the moment, is that Western science has turned inorganic science methods to look at the living world. That's why we have this pollution. Mm. So I think water, and I tend to think everything has being because it is. And when you live into this being, as I've done through the Goethean scientific method, but also through meditation, which takes that further, you discover the being of things, and this can speak with you. You can develop conversations with it, which aren't just woo-woo, I think I've dreamt something up, but they have a certain, there are ways of arriving at validity and reliability of these experiences. Mm. So water, I think the planet is conscious. I think the planet is sentient. And water in its different areas is also clouds, streams, lakes, the sea, portions of the sea, and so forth. And again, this is what traditional societies and ancient sciences, such as within China and India and so forth, they knew that.
Yeah. I've had this has been a question that's popped in and out of my consciousness for years and years and years. Clouds are very reactive to consciousness. Mm-hmm. So, I constantly are having things appear in the clouds to me, images, shapes and all sorts of stuff. And I will get what I call an energetic thump on the head or whatever from these things sometimes where it's like, look at me type thing, or trying to relay some sort of message, right?
And you can develop conversations with these fleeting phenomena, right? Because they're beings. Is being. Everything is, including a metal ruler on your desk. It's a being. Why? This isn't woo-woo. It is. Therefore, it must be being. And the question is, how many levels of condition are we interested in? Just the physical metal ruler? Or are we interested in the ideas within it? Are we interested in some level of consciousness? Maybe it's there, maybe it isn't. But it's easier if you work with living things because we assume that.
Yeah. I bet one of the big questions I had about clouds was whether or not it was another spirit that was using the water and the clouds to form something, or if it was the water itself that was forming something from the all of water, the whole being of water, whether the message was coming from there or if it was another type of entity that was using that as a template to relay a message. So I've almost sensed both.
Great it's wonderful to live into those sort of questions. I think in these areas, things are multidimensional. And so, obviously you don't mean this, but it's not either or. It's both or multiple. And so the water is being, but water essentially is also a moderator. It's a medium for life, medium for consciousness. It's a servant. And so, yes, there could be other conditions of consciousness that are merging with a cloud to create a fleeting form for a specific individual or a group of people.
Yeah, I have two friends who, when one friend's father passed on, and after his father had passed on, he and his son, so the son and grandson, were picking coffee, and they looked up in the sky, and my friend said he looked up into the sky, and he said there was just his dad's face as clear as anything up in the clouds, just with a goofy grin on his face. And he said his dad was never really like that. He said he was a very serious person, but he said, and his dad was totally had no belief of anything happening. His belief is that he would live to the full, and at the end of his life, that would be that. And he didn't have any stress about that, but he said he didn't have any belief that he would continue to exist past his body's life. In any case, so he dies, and then this cloud appears up, and with this big goofy grin and a huge, like a godlight behind, with the sun raying behind this cloud and of his dad's face, and he said, "Have a look at that," to his son, and they looked up, said, check that out, and they both went, huh, because it was like, it's just unmistakable, like just his face and his big, and he just thought, well, right, there you go, he wanted to send a message back that there is something after. And another one was, Iain, Erwin Burney from Sydney?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I thought so. When he passed on, just at the moment that he passed, over the hospital, they were going to the hospital, and some of the relatives, and there was a huge golden angel, like huge cloud in the shape of an angel, just like, and they were really, really clear. They even stopped the car. They said, "Oh, that's something to do with Erwin." And when they got to the hospital, he had passed. It was right at that moment that he was going. But anyways, just want to throw that in.
I agree, and there are all sorts of ways of looking at it. We can also say, the person's mind was changed and they saw it differently, but that's all part of thinking. It's perception and the phenomena, and these things working together. So I think, an intellectual way of looking at it would be to try and reduce it to its minimum parts and say, well, this is how it works. But working at this slightly higher level that we're talking about now, it's phenomena, and phenomena provides experience and provides information. I think this is part of this new way of thinking. We need to be able to look at it, keep an open mind, and say, okay, there's more to life than it appears. There aren't fixed answers and fixed questions. This is fluid. This is this new type of thinking that is taking place. It's an evolutionary change. You can see it happening all around the world. And that's what this 21st of December is about. It's a new age, new type of thinking. There aren't fixed time slots anymore. It's all going to be fluid.
Interesting. Yes, I definitely agree with you. There's that change in thinking. I mean, we have been seeing it begin to really develop along those lines. When we have, the mainstream scientists finally starting to take consciousness into account when they're doing their experiments or figuring out their theories. They're now having to take, and they are taking a serious look at consciousness and its effects. Which is very, that's very encouraging for me, for sure.
Absolutely,
really
it's the
like to
Heisenberg
ask-
principle, and sorry, Mike. There are a whole lot more on water that going back to that question, Tom, that you asked. Water's like the original human being, I think, and I sort of pointed out a fourfold nature of what it is to be human, to have a spirit, to be conscious, to have life, and to have a physical body. Water does that, but I think water also has a sort of thinking, feeling, and willing in it as well. We know about the thinking, so to speak, the memory, the structures. There are, very briefly, water has a nervous system, which can be talked about as cluster structures, which is the H and the hydrogen and the oxygen bonding. And when waters move dynamically, then these get a lot longer, and this is where the frequencies are formed and where the information is stored, where the memory is held. And quantum physicists have started to understand this in the last 10 to 15 years much better, and it's slowly becoming slightly accepted. So there is a nervous system. It's all set up in the water, and there's also in the metabolism, which we can talk about as the digestive organs and all the sort of nutrient base. We know water does this with its colloidal dissolving capacities, its ability to dissolve 84 of the 103 basic minerals or elements and on the planet without any agitation, and it's the erosion power. It moves the world's weather. It's doing all of this.
We had a bit of snafu there, so Tom fixed that in post. Yeah. But Mark, you had a question you wanted to.
Yeah, I'd like knowing what I know about what Iain's worked with in the past. I would like to maybe bring some of that into this discussion, because there aren't many people in the world who would have the level of expertise and experience, direct experience and indirect experience with bringing life energies back into water through various techniques. I would really love to hear Iain talk about flow forms and possibly the use of olloids, or maybe anything that, Iain, you'd like to talk about in terms of helping, assisting the, I guess, cleanup process of allowing water, bringing water back to its natural state and allowing it to drop some of the pollution that it so graciously carries for us uncaring people. I mean, I have a lot of interest in cleaning up water and restoring the gift of water to the world, and I don't know if that sounds like the right line of thought. I'm just really, really hungry to hear what your experience is and what some of your suggestions might be.
Yeah. I love that way you're saying it so graciously carries for us. It's very, so to speak, uncomplaining. But you sense water's reached its limits.
Yeah.
And we have to take that pretty seriously, especially if we're going to get through this century. By 2050, we have leading marine biologists telling us that the oceans are going to be so acidic they will be melting seashells and scales off fish. And many of the oceans, if we continue the way we are, bearing in mind that's another 40 years, and we're just speeding up on all the mess we're making, and we've done a tremendous amount over the last 60. So we're talking about collapse of the oceans and the seas. It's 80% of the world, of nature's biomass. And that's just because we don't relate to water properly, and we use this wrong sort of thinking to solve our problems. So that's why I've been banging on about this dead thinking and living thinking. It really is the issue. All of the other things we're looking at are symptoms. It's the way humanity thinks that's the cause. And the way it thinks in engineering and in business and in industry and in agriculture. And the way we think, then we tend to use water as if it's a liquid mineral. We just pump it up and apply it. You put in an input, you get an output, and that's all it's concerned and financial bottom line. So this carries on. We're pretty much stuffed. So we have to change, and the essential change is how we think. And the way to change our thinking is to really live into water. Biomimicry is a great movement in that way, but there are also other movements. So I think, Mark, the way to go is to look at nature. How does nature clean its water? How does nature return life to water? And that's what we need to look at. And obviously, certain types of deep filtration and dynamic movement, those are the essential ways of doing it. A lot of the techniques that are used are inline flow mechanisms that revitalize water using these cluster structures to absorb frequencies from high quality water that's put into the line. But we also need to oxygenate. We need to oxygenate the water deeply, and dynamic flow and mountain cascades put oxygen into water at a molecular level so that it stays there. So our bubbling systems and our various other systems we use industrially are working with water in a way that nature doesn't do it. Nature pulls the strands of water apart, it shears it, it puts in the oxygen and the energies, and then it reforms it. And this is what Flowform does. Flowform has taken dynamic water flow from mountain cascades, run it through a figure of 8 with a surface. It's an open dish-like surface. And it runs through a figure of 8 and develops a heart pulse. And so for every 1 meter forward of a Flowform cascade, we get about 10 meters of flow because of this wave-like figure 8 motion going from left to right. And so 5 meters of Flowform is a 50-meter mountain cascade with a heart pulse. Now that's another way with biomimicry. Everything alive in nature has a pulse, whether it has a heart or not. Liquid moves with a pulse. As Da Vinci said, if you want to understand life, look at rhythm. And this is an area that our dead thinking completely overlooks. It's seen, rhythm is not understood. But when one looks into water and into life processes, rhythm is everywhere. And as it happens, so is the figure 8 movement, the lemniscate. So those are also in Flowform. And so we find that with Flowform, we oxygenate very efficiently. The oxygen stays. And that can help with some burning out of pollution, so to speak. It also helps with organic pollution because that's usually existing in low oxygen conditions. But it's also very effective with energies. And there are different types of energies, as we were talking about before. But I think in order for us to clean up the planet, which is what we have to take the responsibility for, as well as changing our industries, which of course is an enormous job and it's not going to happen in time, over the next 20 years or so, hopefully, we can make some inroads into it. We need to be able to introduce other types of technologies so that we have a complete battery of technologies, and part of that is filtration. Part of that is introducing transformative power into the water and using consciousness. There are some extraordinary technologies which introduce higher forms of energies into water, which can transform it even to the extent of radioactivity. So a lot of this stuff is really needs all pulling together. And one of the things we're wanting to do at the Healing Water Institute, well, we now, in Britain it's called the Healing Water Foundation, is to launch a website which is be a wiki website and social media and bring it all together, called Water 2050. And the aim is to challenge everyone to work together to get the world's water back to what it was in 1950 by 2050, and to bring as many water-based projects, water remediation projects and concerns all together in this single website, because there is no single website where we can find out what's happening with the world's water. Everyone has their own. So that's a project our charity is looking to do. Anyone wants to help fund it, they need to contact me. I think it's an enormous question. It's almost overwhelming, but we have to believe we can do this.
So this Flowform technology that you're working with, Mark, that propeller on those boats, or is it working on the same principle?
Well, actually, it is. I don't know if Iain. I think we talked about this some, and I don't know how much you know.
The oloid you're talking about.
Yeah, the oloid.
Yeah, the oloid gives off rhythmical figure eights. So, and John Wilkes was involved with Pyle Schutz in the invention of it.
Yeah, so that's telling me there's definitely something to what you're doing here.
Well, I was really hoping that also while we're talking about this, for those who don't know the actual, that this isn't just woo-woo talk. Everything about what Iain's talking about is very practical. It's exceedingly practical. I would love it if Iain could talk about, say, one or two cases, specific cases, like some that stick in, and what the results were before and after. One that comes to mind, and you can pick that, or a different one that's maybe more illustrative, is the one with the dam where you had the flow forms. Instead of, it was just a hydroelectric dam, but they brought life back to the water with using flow forms in that dam.
That was probably the Juviesco project in southern Switzerland.
When you were here in Australia, you had you had a slide presentation, and you showed pictures from it, and I remember it vaguely.
Yeah, sure. I can mention that one and some others. The thing about Flowform, just a brief sideline to it, is that it takes hold of this third element of what is a human being, which is the rhythmic system. We have a heart, we have lungs, we have rhythm operating throughout our body. And that also happens with water. And this, guys, is the area where hardly anybody knows anything about water's capacity to respond rhythmically to create all the forms that are alive embryologically through embryological development. Now, just like lead falls down and helium goes outwards, water responds rhythmically to impulses. And it's a big topic. But through this, all forms find their shape. All living things, including plants, where there's a different process. But water has the capacity to give rise to every living shape that exists. And nature somehow, through creative consciousness, brings life and consciousness and mobility into these living things. But it's only through water's capacity to respond rhythmically. So I just have to leave it at that. But it's a big, big topic. And hugely important, because this only happens when the water is clear and when it's energized. It happens properly. And so Flowform picks up that element as well as the metabolic and as well as the memory or the capacity for water to store frequencies, which is energy. It's all the same thing. And this isn't, as you say, Mark, this is not woo-woo. We're using digital system right now, which operates out of silica going, beep, beep, beep at the speed of light. We put 1 and 0 on this, and suddenly we have all our phones and our computers and everything operating like this. It's just a frequency that's fixed. And on this we put information, and this information gets blattered around the world. And we're like, yeah, okay, we accept that. Now water is the same thing. Water is symphonic, whereas silica is just a little kid going bing, 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 bing on a tiny drum. So water's doing this all the time. Silica refuses to accept any other frequencies with its own. That's why it's so controllable. Whereas water hears, so to speak, and accepts all the frequencies of everything that's happening all around it. And this is measurable as biophoton. This is measurable as light. Everything's giving off light. And, Dr. Pop's biophoton equipment can measure all of this. The Russian scientists are doing this work with water at a very profound level. And so water's picking up everything, giving everything out. And, I know Japanese are working on viscous water as a means for computing science because it can hold vast amounts of information. The issue is, how do we control it from that point of view? It's not controllable.
Has anybody ever been able to upload, so to say, something into water and then retrieve it again yet?
I haven't heard that, but I know the work's going on. And the problem is how to control. You can certainly, from that point of view, Tom, I'd say the answer is yes. You can take water, you can give it signals, say, for instance, of cadmium. It absorbs those signals, and then you can pick up those frequencies because they're coming out. Now, a lot of work's been going on in this last 15 years. People who are not in the slightest bit interested in homeopathy, which is a similar process. So water is this. I've been told by one of these guys who's been working in CERN in Switzerland, deep down in the mountains. 7, 8 years ago, they were working on how to control water, and they were in a lead-lined laboratory, and they had this water. They managed to get it to stop changing its frequencies, and so they thought, right, we've actually immobilized this water so that it's not changing, because it's continually changing its frequencies subtly, because it's accepting frequencies from all around it. And so they went out to have their cup of coffee and what have you, and came back, and the frequencies were subtly different. They thought, how did this happen? There was a slightly different signal. And they found out that during the time they were having their coffee, one of these tiny original particles from the Big Bang that goes through our planet, just one particle, every few weeks. I don't know the name of them. They're not ergs. There's some other.
Tachyons or something? No.
Yeah, just it went blip, blip through the whole planet. And that beaker of water inside the lead-lined wall underneath the Swiss mountains picked that information up. That's how sensitive water is. And how it changes. So what we have to do is try and work with it. And Flowform brings together these three things: this rhythmical pulse, which has to do with life, capacity to oxygenate through shearing water, turbulating it, bringing it back into a harmonic flow. And that affects the energy levels, which is where I got off on frequencies, because that's what we're talking about. And it also influences this metabolic region around capacity to deal with all the nutrients and the movement of it. And you can see that when you see these figure eights moving around in a sort of muscular manner. So what happens here is when you take this water, and this is the elephant in the room, we're taking trillions of liters out of nature, humanity, all the time. 70% of the world's freshwater sources we're tapping into. Within 15 years, according to the United Nations, it's going to be 95% of the world's freshwater sources we're going to be interfering with, sucking it out of nature, where nature knows how to look after it. And we transport it, we store it, we use it in ways where these dynamic flows and methods of movement that nature's used for eons are not present, and this water becomes almost a liquid mineral. It loses what nature gives it. And then we go, oh, we got this problem. The water's got pathogens in it. So what do? We throw chemicals into it, and we filter it, and we do all sorts of stuff to it, and we treat it as a poison. And because it's dangerous. Why? Because it's not oxygenated, it's not energized, it's not the water that is in nature. And we use this 70% for our agriculture, 22% for our industries, and 8% for our city domestic use. And then we just throw this water back into nature with the pollutants, with the chemicals, and we leave it to nature to sort it out. Well, nature's reached a point where it cannot do this adequately. And so technology like Flowform takes what nature does and puts it in. So now, Mark, some of these solutions. It also changes the pH to around about 8.2 and does a whole lot of other things that we're in the process of doing further research on. So let's first of all look at dairy shed effluent. So there are many thousands, millions of cows around the world that have been used for this burgeoning milk and cheese industry. And they, especially in New Zealand, but in other countries, cause an enormous pollution issue. And we have, it's only 25 or so farms, but we know it works, and we're in the process of setting up a business in New Zealand to take this further. There's 16,000 dairy farmers in New Zealand. So the liquid from the dairy shed usually gets hosed out, goes into ponds, and then has to be sprayed out in the fields. And this is anaerobic. It stinks. It's not in a good condition, but it has to go onto the fields. A month for the cows to get back on. The microorganisms and the grass has to do the transformation, and there are lots of pathogens in it when it's on there, and the grass growth is slowed. So you run a 4 million litre pond through a set of 5 Flowform for a number of days, and this goes through a composting process, becomes aerobic, becomes energized, sprayed out on the fields. Cows are back on in 3 days, increased growth, no rank growth, microorganisms are much happier, and so it becomes a liquid fertilizer. We've got a project in Holland at the moment, Mark, you might not have heard of it, 810 Flowform, used in the Surendonk Municipal Effluent Treatment Park.
Wow.
Where half of it's a public park, half of it's your normal sort of filtration, sedimentation ponds. Flowform's used to primarily oxygenate, but we also know it energizes. It's only been in there for 6 months, but it's looking like the ecology of these wetland areas is behaving very well. There's one with Flowform, there's one without.
That'll be.
We know
good,
that. Yeah,
that'll
we know
be
the water goes into the local river much better than the river water. So this is everywhere we take water out of nature. Everywhere we take water out of nature and use it, it has to go back into nature in better condition. Physically, that is chemical, organic, but also energetically. It's got to go back in that way. So we've got another project that's in Giubiasco. It's a town in southern Switzerland, Italian Switzerland. They had problems with their they didn't have enough water for the town anymore, so they put 2 springs. They found 2 springs up in the Alps, brought the water down a kilometre or so, huge amount of pressure. So they used that for a turbine to produce electricity. And then they ran the water on into the town concrete tanks and piping and taps and what have you. And they found that the water was eating away the concrete on the inside. It was rubbing out, taking out the rust, and was melting the tap washers much faster than normal. So they thought, my goodness, what's going on here? The engineer knew of John's work, and so he put in 5 Flowform, ran only some of the water through that, and these symptoms disappeared, and yet the water was physically and chemically exactly the same.
Wow.
So they thought, what is going on here? And so they sent water samples to Emoto's crystal laboratory in Austria, but also to another laboratory in France, which had been going for a lot longer, which is used for medical diagnosis. And the crystals showed a beautiful harmonic shape from the springs up in the Alps. That indicates positive life, formative forces, or energies, frequencies in it. After the turbine, it was very chaotic, obviously broken up and antagonistic and aggressive water, as it's even called by water engineers. And then after the flow form, went back to how it was at the springs energetically.
Wow.
Chemical, organically, exactly the same. So we also have ceramic pieces that we produce now where people can have these in their homes. And we've got sensitive people who are saying the energies coming out of this are phenomenal. And it's not just life energies, but it's more these consciousness energies or even spirit energies that people are picking up.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
The thing is that when we talk about spirit or about consciousness, it's very easy for folk listening, and hello to you all, I might say. It's very easy for us all to go, oh wow, this is way off. This is way out of practicality. This is not real anymore. The only things that are real are things that are down in the physical realm. But actually, everything in the physical realm is formed through consciousness. And if you look at a chair, like I said, or if you look at a great cathedral, how was that formed? The bricks didn't just go, oh, we've got a DNA plan, and they rushed around putting themselves in the right place. There was an architect, there were builders, and it was consciousness has gone into it. And the more you look into nature and you understand the phenomenal wisdom operating in nature, the mathematics behind nature, the metamorphic flow, which is absolutely extraordinarily wise, you can't help but feel there is consciousness operating in nature. And when there's consciousness, there's being. There has to be. Consciousness doesn't just operate spontaneously with nothing behind it.
Right.
So we just need to look at things differently. I'm not talking about a God who's got a magic wand that goes, poof, there's nature. We're talking about processes here. And the thing about Flowform, and also a number of other technologies, but Flowform's the only technology that works with rhythm, as well as the Oloid, almost incidentally, but that's good stuff as well.
Okay, well, Iain, we're at the top of the hour, and if we could get you to give your information out where people can take a look at this stuff, and we did kind of drop the websites at the beginning of the show, but if you do that again. For sure. So it's Flowform, that's FLOWFORM.net, and our charity is Healing Water. That is, our aim is to help water support life, so we want to heal water, because it certainly needs it, and that's healing-water.org. Okay.
Iain, which website do you use for the ceramics? Because I know I have one here that we have at the school here that you sent over, and where can people get those? Because there will be people who want to get those.
Okay, you can see that on flowform.net. It's pretty obvious there on the left-hand side, but for those in Europe, we have a website, flowform.eu, and that can be bought just, straight off the website that way.
Very nice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for listening to this first hour, and I urge you to hit that membership button if you have not already done so, and become a member of the 100th Monkey Radio and help support Ramon and I in all that we do. So we'll see you in the second hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
I love you. denies the pain you carry.
Righty, and you are listening to Perry Mills, Man on a Mission.